all of my meetings, so it's easier to use.
Yeah, totally agree. The last time when I did a live with Jordan, he was like, "Oh, let's do it like this," and it was actually way easier. So I was like, "You can share it." I was like, "God, I sound so
I didn't
old."
know you could share it. That's great. I thought
I
that's
didn't
so
know
much
either.
easier.
Yeah, you can just do it as a live, and he's like, "Oh yeah," and I was like, "Gosh, I'm such a grandma."
No, I had no idea. So
Let
feels like
me
handy
comment.
information I should have.
Yeah, the only thing is, you do have to go in and change some settings in Zoom the first time to get it to link directly to your stuff. But other than that, it was pretty easy after that. I'm just sharing the other link to the actual event page. So we'll give people a little bit of time, and then we can get started.
Yeah.
So we can do like the standard talks, like how's the weather there?
It's very rainy. It's very rainy. Surprise, surprise. Washington
In Washington?
State.
I would have
wet.
never guessed that.
What? It's crazy. I mean, last week it was beautiful and sunny. So last week I went around running around in shorts and a tank top, and I was like, this is great. And now this week it's back to what you'd expect.
It's honestly been the same here. We had, Kansas has such a wide array of weather. And it goes from like being really hot to being really cold, especially in the fall and spring months. So we had a couple days, like 3 or 4 days where it was like 85 degrees. And then like Monday, it's supposed to be 30. So there's some areas.
Yeah, anytime I think about complaining, I just go look what's happening in Colorado, and I go, well, at least it's not, -10 and snowing right now, so I'm winning. I can't complain about any rain when it's so much better than what I was dealing with.
Well, with all the farms that are here, you are like a little more cognizant of like when you get annoyed with certain parts of the weather, like rain, and then you think about how we had a bunch of snow / ice. It was last year or the year before that killed a bunch of the crops. And then, just thinking about like it affects, obviously our economy. Like, so
yeah,
like, oh, great, there's rain. So
we'll take rain.
So for everybody that's jumped on now, I have Tiffany here with me today. She is an expert kettlebell juggler. I don't think she would call herself that, but she is an expert kettlebell juggler. I've known her for some years. She used to do kettlebell sport stuff.
Still do.
And, well, she still do, yeah. So, but that's where I first met her, is at a competition. And she's like really gotten into kettlebell juggling. So we thought it might be interesting to do a little portion on, getting started in kettlebell juggling. Please ignore the child. She's still doing her workout.
That's cool.
She's awesome.
She looks like she's doing a great job. So
she's got an 8 kilogram back there. She's only like 10, 11. She's going to be mad because I said she was 10. She's been training with me forever, but probably one of the only kids that I've ever worked with that will just come in and just work out. Like, she's like, what's my workout? And she will just go do it. A lot of the other kids, you really got to keep them guided. And
you got to ease them in.
Well, and they just get distracted, and she'll just come in, just do all of her sets, and, and then she's like, am I done? And you're like, that's it. Yep. So, but yeah, I've always liked kettlebell juggling. I'm not very good at it myself. I can do some basic flips and everything, but I think it's something that a lot of people are really getting interested in. And I think it's a great thing to bring people into kind of the kettlebell world, whether or not it's sport lifting or it's kettlebell juggling, or just getting people to realize like what all the kettlebell can do. It's like not just for hard swings only, not just for doing rows or windmills. Like, there's all kinds of different ways that you can utilize it for endurance and for just health and longevity. So
yeah, and having fun.
So why don't you give us a little bit of your background, and then we can move into kind of process to start juggling.
Yeah, so I first saw juggling actually at a kettlebell sport competition. I saw Oksana do it at the Cali Open, like was it 2018? That was the first time I saw juggling, and I was like, "Oh, we can do that? That's way cooler than anything I've ever seen." So at that point, I talked to a couple of other people who were juggling, and I just started adding flips into things that I was doing just to figure it out. And since that time, I like practiced and I've become fairly good at it. My style of juggling is not really like a competition style of juggling. Like I first saw, it's more flow and fun. But I can, do all the flips and I teach a lot of people how to hit juggling. And I thought it'd be really rad to show this group how we can get into juggling. I think people get really scared when they see juggling, or at least people who aren't in the kettlebell community. They see it and they go, "Oh, that's super dangerous. You're gonna hurt yourself." I get a lot of questions. I get a lot of comments on my wrists when I see juggling, which the wrists really aren't doing anything except for flicking the bell back and forth. But it's less dangerous than you anticipate. And it's just a thing you can do. Is if you can do a pendulum swing, which I recommend for juggling because it gives you a lot more float, as we know, is a kettlebell sport group. That is like the basis of juggling, and you have 80% of what you need to do to be able to flip a bell at that point. A couple of like just like general things: dropping the bell. You're gonna drop the bell when you're learning how to juggle. That is absolutely part of the process. Uh, don't worry. I drop the bell about a million times every single time I do a juggling session, sometimes more. Some days you're gonna have great days where you barely drop it, and some days you're not gonna drop it at all, and that's great. But just know that that is definitely part of the process of knowing how to figure out the timing of catching the bell. And when you do drop the bell, people are worried you're going to drop it on your toes, you're going to drop it on your face. That is not really a concern. You will basically immediately know if you're not going to make that catch. Like as soon as you release the bell, you're going to go, "Oh, this isn't really going to happen," and you can get out of the way. And there's a lot more time than you think to get out of the way of the bell dropping, even if it's coming from overhead or even if it's coming straight at your toes. The most I've ever done injuring myself juggling has been like jamming my fingers or breaking my nails. My toes have been pretty safe in all of my juggling times. I've mostly like kicked the bell walking over it more than actually like dropping it on my toes. Though I do know a couple of jugglers like to use like steel-toed sneakers as like a backup thing, and that's rad too if you want to use like those sort of sneakers. I'm just wearing my Converse, and that's been fine for me so far. But let's just start, I think, like with the simple flip, if that's cool, if anyone has questions or anything. I think we're good.
I don't think we have any questions yet. Nobody's
Didn't
interjected
figure,
because we
it's
haven't
just a
started.
talking.
So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. Cool. So let me grab my bell. So the
I'll probably
first
have a
flip
group
that
here,
you'll see.
like I said, that's gonna potentially follow along. They're like watching on their own phones.
Perfect. So the first flip is just the simple flip, and with the simple flip is you're just going to get the bell to about chest height, and then you're going to push it away with like the top of your fingers here, and you're going to push it, and then it's going to flip all the way around, and then you're going to re-grab it. The main thing with juggling is don't try to follow the handle. A lot of times people will hit it and then try to like follow where the handle is going. Wait for it to come back around. It's going to come back around to you, and you're going to catch it, or it's going to hit the ground. Either way, but don't chase it, because if you're chasing the handle, you're not going to make the catch, and it's not going to be a flip. So I'll show you what
I've
the
always felt
simple.
like when you're catching it, like when I was learning how to juggle to begin with, like your hand really is staying in the same spot, and you're really just
It
waiting for
stays
that
right
bell to
there.
come right back around.
You just
So
you just
that's
got to wait for it to come. Because if
what
you're
bell
chasing
weight
it,
do you feel
that's
like people should start with? I'm thinking like
I
a
use an
20
8.
kilogram.
I use an 8 for most of my juggling. I use an 8 or a 10. But if you're doing like power juggling or like something, you can go heavier. But to learn the basic movement, always lighter for this. I like for me, there's no need for me to go super heavy on this unless I'm just trying to show off, which is also fine. I like showing off. I get showing off. But I'm using an 8 today, and I use an 8 for about 90% of, or 8 and 10 for about 95% of my juggling. But I'll show you the simple. Cool. So we're just gonna do our pendulum swing, and then as we get to about chest height, you're going to push it with your hand. It's going to come back around, and you're gonna grab. If this is your first time doing it and you're in a spot where you can drop the bell, go out, you can let it drop and just see what the timing is on that handle coming around. Obviously, I'm inside, so I'm not going to let the bell hit the ground because I feel like the Army would be mad at me if I damaged their flooring. But here we go. It's staying basically at chest height the entire time. You want to catch it just as it comes back around. A lot of times people will release it or try to catch it down low. You want to try to catch it right where you left it. And if you're hitting it at the right time in your float, just like we do for all of our other kettlebell movements, it's going to be right there super easy. And we're here, letting that hit the float, and then it's going to go push with the fingers here. It's going to go all the way around, and then you'll just re-grip it and go right back into your swing. And on the re-grip, you can catch it with either hand. I tend to, like when I'm warming up, alternate hands, but you can catch it with either your Sassy pointing, sorry. You can catch it with either hand, and that's totally fine unless you're like trying to specifically do a flow with one side. But I'll show you from this side. Nice and easy. Mainly with our simple flip, we want to keep the handle parallel with like the floor on that release and on that catch. If you're catching it at an angle or throwing it off at the angle, that's going to be harder to catch. So when you hit it here, it should be at this like handle parallel with the floor. Push it around. Oh, it's good. There's lots of rotations. It's good. I see it. Just light push. It doesn't have to be a hard push.
Probably should angle the camera just so people can know, like, everybody struggles with this.
Oh, there
you go.
That was it. That was really close. You just have to catch it now. Yeah, I mean, and if I was like trying to do something like with doubles, I would also probably drop it. Or like, you know, when I first started, I try to post regularly how often I'm dropping the bell, but drops are 1,000,000% part of the process of doing kettlebell juggling. You just have to, that's why most of us are doing it outside, if you see any of the videos, or with a lot of padding around. But see some paddings are being brought out, so right on time. Thank you for that. And so that's our simple flip. Does anyone we need to add questions on that? And I'll show the reverse, because sometimes the reverse is a little bit easier for people too.
Someone was asking if we could slow down the video. Sorry, Dave, I don't know that we're going to be able to do that. She can probably slow down. Can you just do one hand flip? Maybe that will make it. Just do it only in one hand.
Yeah. See if I can get like really close. So it's easy. I don't know if that did anything for anybody. I also have like a lot of slow-mos. So if anybody, I try to post those on my Instagram. I'll put them in my stories and stuff today, so everyone can have access to those. But it's really hard to see in real time. I know. Sorry, but I'll make sure I'll link some of my slow-mos in the comments, like afterwards, so people can just see them in slow-mo. Cool. So let me show you the reverse simple. And reverse simple is just like what it sounds like. It's just instead of pushing with our fingers, we're going to go the opposite way around. Personally, I prefer the reverse over the regular. I don't know why, but that's one I like better. So
before
reverse,
you do that one,
yeah.
There was one question about what distance from your body do you feel like, I guess, is the best release?
Yeah, so I keep it about arm length, bent arm length away for the simple flips. We're not in super tight because that's gonna create a much faster rotation, which is going to be a lot harder to catch as we're learning. But I'm just about relaxed arm's length away, and that's comfortable. There's space to do a little bend and flip.
And if anybody's just keep flipping, Tiff. If anybody's watching, if anybody's watching, you kind of see the bell is still in the process of rising when she's releasing. So it rises slightly higher, it does its flip, and then she's re-catching it just after the single rotation, pretty much in the same spot that she released it. So if you just allow it to do that float, that definitely makes it easier.
Yeah, we're trying to be as low effort as possible. Eventually, you'll want to go higher effort to get more rotations on the bell or things like that. But just like sport, we're trying to be efficient with our energy here. So we're not trying to crank it, because if you crank it, that's going to be a lot more rotations. And then it's going to be a lot harder to catch, especially if you're learning the movement. So the simple, or the reverse simple, is the same thing we were just doing, except for instead of pushing it this way, we're going to push it over the top. And instead of using our fingers, we're just going to use our thumb to go over, and you're just going to hook it kind of and then push it over. Same thing with everything else we just did. We're going to let it hit the float. We're going to wait for it to come back around, and keep the handle parallel with the floor as much as possible. And with this one, the arm, I find, comes in a little bit tighter, so I can have that space to push it with my thumb away from my body. But same basic things that we were just doing, just pushing it with that little thumb. Looks like we're doing in the background.
Or damaging your gym floor. There's it's rubber, it's concrete and rubber.
Oh, cool.
There's been a couple bells that have come my way, so I'm like, oh. Luckily, they're only using 4 kilogram and 6 kilogram bells.
You got to get one of those batter wall things. Protect your back.
This is great for them because they always want to do this, all this acrobatic shit, and I'm just like, guys,
this is not my expertise.
Well, just usually the bells are going everywhere, and I'm like, man, I was like, we're in a hole in the wall in a second.
Well, it's great. It'll be fun. Now they'll be able to do it without putting holes in the wall, hopefully. Get your deposit back on your gym. So that is our reverse, just hooking it with our thumb. And she's doing back there, she's catching it with her hands instead of that's totally cool. But you can see she's not afraid of the bell coming out and hitting her. Yeah, that's great.
So there was a question about when you are doing the flip, are you actually pushing your thumb into the handle, which I think that you said that you were physically pushing that thumb into the handle.
Yeah, so it's hooked on. So it's just stiff. I'm not hooking the whole thumb here. It's just like a stiff thumb. I'm not letting it be wiggly, and I'm just pushing it, my hands like this, kind of here. So we're here, and then we're pushing it with that power from the thumb. Can you do it from up front? Don't know if this does anything for anybody. It's really hard to see. But it's still just coming back around and hitting us just like we did with the simple.
Can you show the swing and just end at the top where you would push it over and just don't flip it, like, and then go back into the swing so you can kind of see like the hand movement, I guess. There.
Right there. It's a little bit funny looking, but that's the spot. Just about to push it. If I had let go, it would be flipping around right now. Whew. Just like,
I think you would definitely end up on that, like, what is it called? Dumb gym.
Yeah. Yeah, they saw me doing a kettlebell. Yeah, and rightfully so. It's goofy looking. But that's the timing of it. It's just hitting it, and that's where you hit, like, because I'm holding onto it, it's hanging up like that, and it's being weird. But if you just let your fingers off the top of it, it'll just rotate all the way over, and then you'll have a reverse flip. Okay, I'm gonna take my hoodie off. Actually, I'm starting to break a sweat in here.
Well, our views are going to jump about 10 points, so, you know.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm just wearing a tank top. It's nothing that exciting. I'm wearing someone else's brand also. I should have worn my own. That's not me. Cool. So the heli is, or helicopter, is exactly what it sounds like. You're just going to rotate the bell here and around. This is where we're going. It's going all the way around. Depending on which direction you're going, you can kind of pick which way. But to start, same thing we just did with our thumb and our wrist. You just got to push it around, just like that. So it's a little thumb helping push it, and then the wrist is making sure it stays lateral versus going over. Same things like we do with the other swings. We're hitting that float point and then hitting the flip. That's where we're going. And we're just waiting for it to come around. We're not chasing that handle, and it'll end up right where it needs to go. But we're here, this little lateral parallel with the floor still, and then you flip it, push it around, catch it, same hand, different hand, whichever you feel more comfortable with. Might be easier to start with the opposite hand because you don't have to like flip it and then re-grab it. But it's not there's no hard and fast rules here, which is part of why I like juggling. I can just do what I want. There's no rules.
Someone said they don't recommend trying this in Crocs.
In socks?
In Crocs.
Oh, yeah,
Crocs,
no,
like
maybe. Yeah, no, I got it. Yeah, I'm trying to think of any jugglers go wearing Crocs. I feel like my friend Brian sometimes wears Crocs when he juggles, but he's also doing like one flip for like a stupid amount of weight, and then he's like done, and you're like, okay, all right. He's like, I'm gonna do a quad with a 50, and you're like, okay, that's cool. I'm not doing that. Yeah, is that the only question on the helis? You have some more?
It was just a comment. Somebody did ask about the shoes, which I answered in the comments,
Yeah,
asking like, oh, should you wear shoes that have steel toes in them? And you can buy them, but you
you
just wear tennis
can.
shoes. I've always just
Yeah,
when I was kind of practicing it, I've just done tennis shoes. It is definitely easier to do outside because you just don't have to worry about it. Doesn't bounce as much.
yeah,
Um,
actually,
because on the rubber floors, or even if you have padding, it bounces
it's
quite a
gonna.
bit.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I prefer the outdoors, but it doesn't always work out that way. Especially not with PNW weather and things. So when I practice my juggling, like when I do it outside, I have to make sure I'm like very specifically oriented so I don't accidentally, sling it into my wall or something. Um, I don't want to make housing mad. They just gave me a house to live in. So let's do a mug flip. The mug, we're going to change from our parallel with the floor, and we're going to bring the handle up, and we're going to push it around with our thumb and catch it. It's a mug flip because you're going to hold it like a mug. If you're transitioning between like a heli or a simple into a mug, you just have to change the orientation of your hand in your swing. So if you're coming from a heli, you're going to be flat, right? You want to switch your hand to here. Otherwise, make sure it's actually like where it needs to be, because otherwise it turns into a weird wobbly mess that is really, really hard to catch and often ends in your fingernails being snapped off. Not that I would have any experience with that.
I actually think that I didn't know it was called the mug flip, but I think
Yeah.
that one is actually easier than the other flips for whatever reason. And I find myself, it's way easier for me to do that one than either the forward back flip or so.
Really? That's like my least favorite one.
Oh,
That's so fun. I mean, and I think that's also it. It's like you're gonna find flips that you like vibe with better, and that's totally cool. Like if you find the one that works for you and you like doing it, do it. Like I'm not gonna tell you not to do it or say it's worse. It's just not the one I like to do the most. Additionally, I'm doing it with like doubles, and I hate doing it with doubles. But but I'll show the mug flip. And it might be easier coming from sport because we tend to be more thumbs up situation for that. So coming from that, but mug flip.
yeah. And when she's doing this one, you're literally just pushing your hand or with your thumb around to the
Yep.
outside. I think the transition just seems easier for me, but there was a question about doing like a double flip, I think forward or back, but
For that, literally, what you're doing is just pushing it harder. Like that's what you're. Uh, it's just pushing it with more force around, and you try to get a little bit more oomph on the rise. So I'm gonna try to when I do a double, I'm going like a little bit deeper into my swing, usually getting a little bit more power out of that swing. So that way, when I do get 2 rotations, I have the time to grab it versus it being grabbed down here, which is also a thing people do when they're doing doubles, triples, quads. I'm not hitting triples or quads.
I
But
think they're asking
you
because I guess they're having trouble catching it on that double flip. I
mhm.
don't know if you have any advice for
um I think so it depends on where they're having trouble. Are they having trouble because they can't get their hand on it? Or are they having trouble because they're not, or is it coming too low? Or those are like, it kind of depends on where the trouble lies. If you're having trouble getting your hand on it, it's mostly just doing it. Because doing a double can be kind of scary. And so you're seeing this bell kind of rotate fast, and your brain is going, I don't want to put my fingers in there, and it's just doing it anyways, even if it is a little bit sketchy for your brain. if
We'll
it's
just call
timing
Dave
wise,
Atcham out in the chat because he's
yeah,
the one that's struggling with it. He
yeah,
said
it's
he just
cool.
has trouble like finding his grip, like actually finding the handle. Like he can do the single flip, but as soon as he goes to the double, he's just really struggling to find the handle.
Okay. I think it's more of watching the rotations at that point. So when you're doing the flips, let the bell drop a couple times. Like when you're practicing, you're gonna hit the double, like get the double rotations and watch the handle and see where that is, or even film it in slow-mo, and you can watch where the bell is rotating to, and you go, oh, that's where that handle is on that second rotation. Now I go in and I snatch it. And that I think is really helpful. That's what filming sets generally is really helpful. Filming for juggling is exceptionally helpful because it's happening very quickly, as we've experienced in this video or in this chat. It's really hard to see everything happening in live feed. Whenever I'm breaking things down for my students, it's always like, here's a slow-mo of me doing the exact movement 15 times in a row, so you could see all of the things. So slowing it down and letting it drop and seeing where the handle is will make it a lot easier to visualize. And also just going and not hesitating when you're going for it. Hesitating is most of the like the thing with any sort of flip catching is going to be the thing that's going to slow you down, and prevent you from making it. Just watch it, drop it, film it, and then go for it, and don't let your brain talk you out of it. And you might break a nail.
I think this
Well,
is
I
like
recommend
a keep
trimming.
your eye on the ball kind of situation.
Yeah, definitely. And it's hard to keep your eye on the ball when it's a silver piece of metal flitting through the air. I get so it's tricky. So that's why the slowing down I think is really beneficial for juggling. When I was learning how to do a double, that was exceptionally helpful for me because I have no depth perception. I'm like blind in one eye. So the judging the rotations was all but impossible for me. Like I just couldn't, I physically didn't know when the bell was flipped over twice. So slowing it down and like being able to know where that was the only way I was going to be able to do it. My friend Gavin, Twisted Steel Cheat Meal, who's like a phenomenal juggler, probably if anyone does juggling or watch juggling, he's one of the people you've watched. He said when I was figuring it out was to try to throw a triple and try to catch a triple, and then that's what I was doing, and that's how I ended up catching a double my first time, because judging the distance for the double was just really hard for me to see depth wise. I like to do things that are really difficult for blind people. I also played goalie for a long time, so it's extra
This
challenging if
doesn't
you
have
have no
anything to
depth
do with
perception.
juggling, but my husband, when he used to fight MMA, and his vision is not great. Like, I mean, he's pretty blind. And I
Yeah,
was always like, man, like, how do you know when you're close enough to punch somebody? And he's like, and I start getting hit in the face, I'm close enough. And I was like,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Yeah, it's really just like a practice. It's in like with anything, it's just practicing and knowing the timing. Like when you're practicing a snatch, you don't just get that timing immediately. It takes a minute to find all of those pieces. With juggling as well, it takes a second for your brain to recognize the timing of that, and you just have to be cool with it. And also with learning a new pattern, for me, I always find the first time I'm trying to learn a new pattern or a new move, a new Indian club pattern, whatever, I don't tend to get it on the first day I'm practicing it. This might just be me being bad at things, but usually if I don't do it that first day, I sleep on it, I try it again the next day. So there's some sort of neural connections happening overnight where my brain is starting to be able to make those patterns and connect them. And that's been really helpful for me as well. Once I figure out what it is, even if I can't actually get it that first day, I can usually get it within the next week or so of trying. Um, yeah, but I hope that's helpful. I hope I wasn't just with the doubles. Doubles are hard. It took me a really exceptionally long time to get doubles just because visually it was impossible for me to judge. But the triple trying to throw a triple and trying to catch up to triple was helpful. It was like a cue that was like, oh, okay, let me just try that. And then all of a sudden I was catching doubles. Like it was like nothing. Because the strength's there. If you're able to, do any of the lifts that we're doing, you have the strength to throw them. It's more just teaching your eyes and your hands and your body to do all the things to connect it. Um, cool. We could do we need to keep going on mugs? People need more mug stuff or
I guess if you want to go through a show, maybe a mug one more time, just because we kind of
yeah.
broke it up there for a
Yeah.
second.
So here's our mug.
So the mug flip, if somebody's just jumping on, is basically you're holding the bell perpendicular to the floor and pushing to allow it to
Away
spin
from
in a
you.
circle. Yeah. Do you ever flip it the other way? It seems like it would be odd to catch.
I don't really. I don't know if I could. I don't feel like I have the power that I want. Yeah, no, I don't. I never do. I guess you could. I do with helis. Helis I can go back and forth on the rotation. But like I said earlier, I don't like mugs that much. I don't practice them that often. As far as like moves that I do, they're not they don't flow very well for me. So they're not a move that I do. Cool. If no one has questions about mugs, I'll try to show some lateral movement. We'll start with our swing and our snatch and then our back and forth. So if you're doing juggling, you're not generally just going to be doing swings, but it's really helpful to know what that movement looks like so you can adapt it into the juggling version of it. So if you're doing a swing, a lateral swing, we're going to stand up tall, and just like a regular swing, our hips are going to follow the bell, right? So if we're doing a regular swing, we're coming back, lateral swing this way. So I always start it out in front, just like I do with the lateral swing, or you can start it up in like a rack or a snatch position. And that's a lateral swing. And then from here.
And this is what you would practice if you were trying to move into flipping under your leg or just back and forth.
Yeah.
So fancy.
Helps. It's helpful. It's helpful to have this motion. And also this is kind of, if you're doing like more flowy type juggling, this is a fun way to transition into a turn or something else like that. But yeah. And also lateral movement is kind of one of the things that makes juggling so cool. And part of why I started doing it, because when you're doing sport, this tends to be where we live for sport. So part of the reason I even started juggling was because I wanted to do something out here, because I was doing sport and I was doing running, which is just everything was right in this area. So I added juggling in originally so I could be moving outside of that very specific plane of motion. And this is a really easy way to transition.
I think also it's fun because it's very playful. Yeah. When you're doing it, most traditional lifting is like, okay, I'm doing, bench press and I'm doing sets of this. And so it's kind of a really playful way to exercise and allow your mind to kind of do whatever it wants and to create movement. So
yeah, and it's a different kind of like cardio as well. Like, as you can probably hear me breathing right now, I'm not going heavy. I'm not doing anything like exceptionally like difficult for me, but I'm still going to be breathing. Like, I'm still getting my heart rate up. And that's also beneficial for most things that we're doing in our life. I tend to make juggling like active recovery or like cardio sort of work for me. And it's really nice to like pair it with a run. Like, I feel like very like my conditioning feels really solid with that, especially if you're doing like competition style juggling where they're doing 5-minute long flows without putting the bell down, which is insane to me. But that is our lateral swing. Usually from this side, people are always afraid they're going to hit their knees, and like maybe, but generally, just like you do with anything else, you're going to have enough awareness of your body to be able to get yourself out of the way. And very easily, this can transition into our snatch. So instead of letting the bell come back down after our float, we're just going to push into it like we do for our regular snatch and bring it to our overhead. Just down. And if you're actually doing like a juggling flow, this is a second where you can rest, just like for sport. Makes it really easy to take a second and then go into our flip. Or if we get stuck sideways, you can use that to transition directions.
So, and if people were watching, you can really see that when she is lateral swinging, like a lot of that weight is transitioning into that same side hand foot. And the weight is transitioning to the outside as the bell is swinging to the opposite side of her body.
Yeah, just we do our regular, we're just following the bell. And it might be you might not be as deep as me if your hip mobility this direction is not as strong. But as you practice this movement, your hip mobility will get a little bit stronger. And then that can bring us into the back and forth lateral flips, which we combine our lateral and we combine a simple or a reverse, depending, or any of the moves we learned already, but we'll start with our simple and reverse. So we're going to come around, we're going to catch it up the top. To start, don't add the flip, just so you can get that timing of it. And this versus our other lateral is going to be a little bit more like our pendulum, where we're just sort of bending the knees to drive the power up versus full hinging either way. So we're just letting our legs help drive it. And help lift it. You can see there's a lot of lift. And then once we feel comfortable with that, you can add in your flips, just like we would with our other flips. Find that float. Once you find that float, we just add the rotation. So just letting the bell follow the momentum and releasing and then recatching and going straight into that other one. But also it's helpful to learn how to do the lateral snatches, because if you get stuck in this, if you're like doing a flow, it's very easy to be like, okay, this is what I'm doing now. I don't know where to go from here. And then you can go, okay, I'll just snap. I'll just get here, and now I can come back to my front or whatever other position I would like to be in. But
so Eric was asking if you have actually ever hit your knees.
Yes. Yeah, I have.
You're alive. See, it's fine.
Yeah, I did just then. I did while I was demoing it.
It also can be very similar. Like when I'm snatching, like I have hit my legs before, you know, and usually it just slows down the momentum. I generally have not. I don't think I've ever gotten hurt when I've like hit myself. But even when I was doing like mace swinging, like I've hit my legs before when the mace is swinging behind me. It doesn't feel great, but it's never really hurt me.
No, I've like,
and I think the same thing. People are usually pretty aware of their body positioning, and so you know, even when you're snatching, people are like, "Well, how do you not hit your legs when you're swinging down for the snatch?" And you're like, "Well, you know, you're guiding it between your legs, and
I know where my legs are, I know where my arm is. Like that's like you know, you have like bodily awareness. Like I know I can't see my arms, but I know where they are right now. I can't like it's like that, but if your eyes are open, you can see them and you know where they are, and you can feel it. And like if you're gonna hit yourself with like an actual force where it would be painful, you're gonna know, like, very quickly. Like, you're gonna know if it's going to be a thing that's going to hit you and hurt you. But even like times where I felt like I was like, oh, I think I just screwed up like big time. I think I just whacked the crap under the legs when I first, like, a couple of times, if I try to do something stupid like a rainbow into the under the legs, which I've tried. I've succeeded before, but when I was learning it, I did a rainbow, caught it, and went pow right into my knee, and I was like, "Oh, that's it for me." I didn't even have a bruise at the end of it. I was just like, "Oh," it's more shocking than like actual injury. I say that, and then Power Bells, he did actually hurt himself like in the last week or so. He's like a power juggler. And he like hurt himself, but he was trying to do I don't even know, a double under the leg, something insane with like a 20-kilo bell. And at that point, you know what your risks are. And at that point, it's on you. It's not like he's, going, the kettlebell hurt me. He's like, no, I overextended my abilities and I knew that I was pushing it and I was fatigued at the end of a training set. And that's why I did that. And he had so much force, he like pulled himself down and like landed on his shoulder. And it's like, it's rough. That sucks. But also he knew what he was doing, and knew, but like I said, like any sort of like knee hits, leg hits, I've gotten a couple bruises, but that's really been it. Like I've jammed fingers, a lot of fingers. I've jammed a lot of fingers. I've broken many a nail off. I always trim my nails before juggling, because if you do try to catch the handle, it'll snatch them down, and that's not fun. But it's not like the end of the world. You can do that with anything. Yeah, but don't worry. If you hit yourself, it sucks. I'm not gonna lie. It's not like, oh, that was fun, but you'll live to fight another day. But let me, I'll show you some more of the lateral from this angle. You can kind of see where I'm at. And you'll see as I'm doing that rotation with the flip, I'm coming across, I'm pushing with that hand, and really the bell wants to go, and it kind of wants to like go up anyways. So you're just sort of like helping it along, helping it hit that flip. And you can go the opposite. I'm here. I'm just letting my fingers.
And really, there's a considerable amount of space between your body and the bell, probably like 3 to 4 inches.
Yeah.
Because your arm is hanging down, you have a slight hinge. And when you get that pendulum going back and forth, there is a considerable amount of space between yourself and where the bell passes.
I'm not trying to be right on top of my knees. One, it wouldn't feel good, but two, it would slow me down. Like if I'm clipping my knees every rep, I'm never gonna get it high enough to where it needs to go. But this is sort of the basis to doing all sorts of moves. Some I can't do in here because it's the ceilings are right there. But from here, you can build out to do rainbows or mills, just using this leg motion.
And is there a specific buildup when you're trying to move from just, basically arm height swinging to transition to taking the bell over your head to pass over, that you kind of go through to make it to that point? Or you just like, shit, just go. Just try it.
A little bit of both, actually. So I think a lot of juggling is just like a shit, let's just do this. Like, let me just see. Once you're confident with these basic movements, these are the movements that you're going to use to build out literally everything that we're doing. Every piece of our juggling repertoire comes from simple, reverse, mug, heli, lateral. This is where we go out from. So once you're confident in these movements, why not just try it? But I do recommend being confident and comfortable with these movements to start, because like, why would you try to throw it over your head if you can't catch a simple? So make sure you know how to do those. Make sure this feels good. And when you first start doing it, don't worry about adding a flip. I just start with the throw. There doesn't need to be a flip to start. Okay, I'm just gonna throw it around, catch it, do another one, throw it around, catch it. And then once that feels good, then you go, let me hit the thing and hit the flip. Now I'm gonna go, or do a rainbow and whatever. But once you have these basic movements, you have the ability basically to build out every piece of the juggling scene.
I don't know if you're able to in the space that you're in, but can you show a waiter's catch? Like
the static? Let's find out. Let's find out if I can do
it. Why is there a hole in the ceiling? Oh, maybe?
And maybe I just have to catch underneath. Let's see.
I'll just have to delete this video if something's damaged.
Oh, we're good. I just have to get really underneath it. Generally, you're not going to catch with that deep of an under squat. So when you're doing a static, which I know is a very fun, fancy move, you're catching it like you do with a jerk. So like in your second dip, that's when you're catching it with your arm like locked out. That's the big thing with the static. You're not trying to like catch it locked out. You're getting underneath it like a jerk. So far we're good. So, and when you're learning it, it's okay to catch it not exactly where you want to catch it until you figure out what that rotation is.
Because it's really just making one revolution before it comes to your hand. Just like if you did the front flip or a back flip.
Yeah, just like a simple. Yeah, and then if you add an extra rotation. Yeah, and if you do an extra rotation, then you've done a double simple or double static. Yeah, but it's really just getting underneath it. I think that's the biggest issue I see people have with the static. Static is like a really nice move to have, because if you are doing competitions for juggling, or if you're doing flow, that's your rest point. It's a good point to stop and breathe. You're like, and that's like how competition jugglers break up their like bundles for each section of their thing. They break it with a static, and they go, and then they go into whatever madness that they're going to do next, and then they do 15 double flips behind the back or whatever, and then they go, okay, static. Okay, now I'm going to go this way and do whatever. And you can do static from any angle. You can do a lateral static, just like a lateral snatch. Some people can do behind the back static. Some people being Colin Daring, who's the best. But yeah, it's that's another one that, like with all juggling, it looks really complicated. Once you get it, you're like, oh, okay.
So I think the big point here is that, juggling is not actually that complicated. Like if you learn like the first 5 movements, and then you kind of can just build on those and integrate them together. And so it's looking really fancy because you're flipping it underneath your leg, but it's really just a lateral toss, and you just have
the balance and the mobility to pick your leg up. And that's cool, because that sometimes the balance is part of the problem. But if you're practicing this, practice your balance also. The balance is a skill you should probably have. And yeah, it's cool, and it looks cool, and you can make this obviously like insanely more complicated. Like I'm sure people who are in this have seen people doing insane flips, seen my flows where they look really complicated and things like that. But when you're starting, you don't have to make it look like that. You don't have to do full sequences. When I first started doing juggling, I just was, instead of doing a swing like in a complex, I would add a flip swing. And that's how I started getting comfortable with it. And then once that felt good, I was like, okay, well, let me try this other type of flip. Let me try this. Or now I'm going to string 2 flips back to back and see how that works. And then eventually, if you build out these movements, you have a whole sequence of that you can put together, which feels really cool. It's interesting, and it's dynamic, it's fun. And I love doing it. And I'm glad that more people are interested in doing it instead of just yelling at me on the internet, telling me that I'm stupid for flipping a bell and I'm going to end up in a hospital. Because
I think people just like to feel like somebody else is listening to them. It's always easier to throw stones at people, you know? And it's like one of the things that whenever I see somebody online, if I don't think that their technique is perfect or something, and rather than like commenting on their video, if I really want to help them, I'll privately message them and be like, hey,
yeah.
Are you interested in some feedback? Because it sounded like you were struggling. Like, I'm willing to give you some feedback if you want it. But some people don't want it. Like, they're just posting to put their stuff out there to either, keep themselves honest. But I think, a lot of times people are just dicks and they're not face to face, so they don't give a shit.
It's really easy to be mean on the internet.
Yeah, I had a student that posted like a snatch video on TikTok or whatever, and the lady was like, "It's the form for me," and you're like, "You don't even know what you're talking about." Like,
no,
you don't know what people are doing, what they're working on, why they're doing it. And if it was the first time that you had ever seen kettlebell juggling, you'd be like, "Oh my gosh, this is so dangerous! Like, why are you doing it?" And it's the same thing for like sport,
Bent pressing, I get so that all the time.
And so many times, like when you're sitting in the rack with 2 bells, they're like, "Isn't that bad for your back?" And you're like,
they're always so concerned for our back.
But nobody ever asked me if my back's okay when I got to carry my kid around. They're just like, "Oh, that's normal." And you're like, "I'm literally in the same position, and my kid's heavier."
Way heavier. Yeah. And anytime my videos go off of my like lovely little corner of the internet, anytime it like gets a little bit viral, that's every single comment is like, "This is so stupid. This is so dangerous." You're like, why don't you try it? Like, obviously I didn't start with this. And that's the thing when you're doing juggling, like you don't start with juggling. There's no person coming into a kettlebell gym, seeing a kettlebell and immediately trying to flip the bell. You start whenever I like teach juggling to like very beginners, we start with our simple swing, clean, and snatch, because those are going to be the building blocks for everything anyways. And if you can have the timing for your swing, your clean, and your snatch, because those are going to be a little bit different, that's going to help you adapt to doing a simple reverse and all the other things that we're trying to do. But you have to know where to start. And once you have that knowledge and once you build from there, it's really endless opportunity to do all the things. That's why people like kettlebells. That's why I like kettlebells. Is there's you can make them whatever you want them to be. You can do stupid heavy squats, or you can flip a very light bell over your head and feel really cool. Like there's no wrong way.
Well, we're coming to the end of our hour. So if you want to give a plug, I don't know if I think you do coaching. Yes.
Yeah, I do coaching.
So if you want to kind of give a plug about, where people can reach out or where they can find you on Instagram. I sound like an old person. You know that the Facebook,
the face pages. I am Tiffness.fitness on basically everything. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. You can email me tiffnessfitness@gmail. My website is tiffnessfitness.com. On there's a page called Work with Tiffany. You can see all of my stuff and all the ways to work with me broken down, or you can just shoot me a message if you just have questions and don't want to look at my website, because sometimes that feels daunting to people. But really, I am always open to chat with people, so shoot me a message. And I will put in my stories today, because I know I mentioned the slow-mo juggling flips, so people can see them slow motion a little bit closer, because I know that's like very helpful for figuring out the flips and things. So I'll make sure I'll put those in my stories. So check out my stories today. and I'll have those, and I'll highlight them as well for everyone.
Well,
Yeah,
I
that's
really
all.
appreciate you coming on here. Like I said, like all the people that come on here, they come on and donate their time and their knowledge for free. So if there's anybody else that is within the Kettlebell Almanac group that has something that they would like to share with the group that they feel like is going to be helpful, there isn't any specific requirements to do like an educational video on here. Usually I just reach out to, I don't say random people, but I reach out to people that I know have specific skills. I'm like, hey, you want to come on here and do this? So if there is anybody out there in the world that would like to come
Yeah.
on here and present whatever they have, feel free to shoot me a message or, post it on the Almanac page, and I'll be happy to get you set up for a time.
Yeah.
So,
We'll have to do a bent press one too.
oh yeah, I've
Yeah.
actually never done that
That's great.
ever.
It's my favorite. That's what I do all the time. So we'll have to do a bent press one as well at some point. So we can spread the word on all of the weird lifts that make people on the internet angry. It'll be
I
great.
actually wouldn't mind learning how to do a bent press, but I've literally never done one. So
they're
we'll have
they're
to set
great.
something up for that to do like
Mhm.
weird shit with kettlebells can be the
That's my
title.
that's my jam. That's all
So
I want to do.
well, you have a good day. Like again, I
Thanks, you
said
too.
thank you. So it was
Yeah,
really
of
good talking with
course.
you. I haven't seen you in
Yeah.
forever other than just on the
This.
on the gram and
Oh,
stuff. So
yeah.
all
Good to
right,
see you
see ya.
too. See ya.